Was that a strategic delay? I got up here and I was like, why am I alone? Anyway, thank you. So I was in here for the Tech Town Hall. You were in with the agency. Give me, what's the report? What were the top 3 things that came up the most?
Sure. So first off the bat was talking about culture and talent.
Oh no, what's going on? It was reading 35 minutes. Okay, is it still reading? I don't know what it's reading.
Not only are we competing against fellow agencies, also against clients, ad tech platforms, as well as companies. So there's a big focus. It's not working. Really loud voice.
Must be the mic then.
It's got to be. Check. So, the focus very quickly shifted to the war for talent, given there's a sort of everyone's competing for the exact same sort of limited pool of talent, really really smart digital talent, whether it's publishers, ad tech platforms, or clients increasingly, right? Given some of the recent focus on taking some of the capabilities in-house, such as programmatic or search. So I think that was one big focus, and then figuring out how do we sort of from a retention strategies, what are we focusing on? How do we try and keep some of these people? What does that look like, right? So that was one.
Beer fridge?
You know what? That was only, I think, the beer fridge and sort of the ping pong tables and sort of, I guess, summer Fridays and the with massages every other week, whatever those words, right? I think those are all like
That's
table stakes.
now?
Yeah. Those
Okay.
are table stakes. So you gotta
So
go.
let me just jump in there because I was actually talking with Pete Stein a while ago here, and he had talked about something like 40% turnover, and being worse in other markets.
Correct. So no, that's true. Actually, the numbers overall for I think across the board are anywhere from 30 to 45%. And I think it was done sort of a gut check and talked to some of my colleagues at Sister Opcos, either within IPG or within sort of Group M, and sure enough, the numbers are very similar. So the range is absolutely anywhere from 30 to 40, 45. So there's definitely a big problem, right?
So that's like an internal problem for agencies, but that's like an external problem for those who depend on agencies. We have technology companies in this room. That was a big thing that came up again and again,
Right.
Which was basically trying to figure out the opaque and structures of agencies to try to sell in solutions, what level to go at, whether to have a holding company oriented strategy, whether to go up at the top, at the bottom, all throughout, or whether to go to clients and have the clients then tell the agency.
Right. No, I think that's sort of interesting conundrum, right? Sort of because if you're instead of having sort of spent my fair amount of time on the client side and then on the agency side, I can tell you I'm a big believer at the end of the day, if you believe you have the right relationship and the right solution, do not be shy. Go directly to clients if you have to. I get it. But I think you have to be cognizant, depending on the culture of the agency. In certain cases, if one tries and does that as a solution provider, the high probability to get blacklisted. So take your chances. Like, do you really want to go down that route? I would strongly suggest starting with the agency, and if one gets traction, go for it. If you don't get traction, it's a different story. Completely get it. But I would start with and then sort of use them as partners and say, hey, you might have a relationship directly with a client for whatever reason. Say, great, hey, I would like to bring you along in with me. Let's go as partners. Let's figure out together what a smart strategy is. I would start with that. I would strongly suggest that approach. And then for whatever reason, if that does not work, if the solution or the tech provider is not getting the traction, then by all means, let them know, hey, I've given you a heads up. We have had multiple conversations. I'm going to go ahead. So I think that's sort of.
So did anything stand out as far as a solution to the talent challenge? Because I feel like the talent challenge is something that is always discussed when it comes to agencies, or is that just how it is?
I mean, part of it definitely is how it is, but I think sort of recognizing what can we do differently, right? So I mean, it was interesting. I was sort of talking to my colleague Katie Jameson, who actually is instrumental in helping me figure out sort of the right retention and sort of acquisition strategy. And we quickly realized one of the key segments we were focusing on was the millennials, right? These people going after, and it's very interesting in terms of what they look for. So one of the big focus they have is on constant learning. It's not so much on titles anymore, right? Constant learning, so having the right sort of learning paths, learning paths for them. Also, another really interesting thing for them is the CSR, corporate social responsibility. Really, really big on that. and some agencies sort of focus on it more than others. But again, if you go and compare ourselves to, for example, Facebook and Internet.org, they're doing an amazing job, right, of literally providing web access in underdeveloped world, third world, right? So it's like start focusing in those kind of things which you believe are important to the millennials. But from our perspective, those are the majority of the people that we are hiring. So again, no one realized what motivates them, and then how do you align that as part of your core culture and your values? And that will again sort of help you.
Do you think, on that topic, do you think agencies are sort of to blame for this problem? Because, you know, on one hand, they sort of decry job hopping, particularly the younger demographic, but on the other hand, they don't hold it against the people that they're hiring, the fact that they've had 4 jobs in 6 years.
Sure, I mean, there's absolutely a double standard, no two ways about it. But I think sort of we're strong believers is if as long as you have a strong career path laid out for them, great. Having said that, we encourage everyone, so whether you're on the creative side or sort of the digital side, the planning side, research side, is almost look at it as if you're building your own book, your portfolio. So if you're getting stale, we strongly encourage you to rotate, i.e. within different clients, within different categories, get different skill sets, and then come to us and talk to us how we can help you. If you're not, by all means, go out and look for other jobs, right? So the key is as long as you're constantly upgrading and learning and building your book, so to speak, you should be in a good place, and we should keep you constantly engaged. If for whatever reason we fail to do that, by all means. I think so. That sort of is the double-edged sword. At the same time, given the constant need, it's feast or famine. We might try and plan ahead, but as you know, in the agency business, anytime you get a big client, that's only then you can hire. Then all of a sudden, there's this massive need, and you need 30 or 40 or 100 people, which leads to a whole different set of questions in terms of, you know, the whole commission-based and FTE model, which, you know, that was actually another
Did
one
that
of the
come
things
up?
we
Was
did-
that
absolutely,
one of the
yes.
things?
So, great segue. We discussed compensation. So the whole FTE and sort of, so what was interesting was there was a lot of talk about how do we get away from, you know, the old way of doing business, which is, you know, getting paid for media output. I'm like, I think slowly but surely those days are going away, and the premise and the focus going forward needs to be on relevant business outcomes. So those are the conversations we need to have with the clients. Again, not easy to do, but if you get down that path and say, help us understand what the relevant business outcomes are, and if not the entirety of our fee, maybe a part of a fee is based off that, how do we start having those conversations, right? Because that's where the business is headed. If you just look at it from a tech perspective and automation perspective and what the Facebook and the Googles, as well as data largest of the world are doing with online, offline, and attribution, very quickly it's about ROI, right? So the more you can prove that out in real time and get compensated based off that, it's a very different conversation as opposed to, you know, here are 50 FTEs and here are 100 media plans and 60 creative plans. That just, it's sooner or later, that's just, it becomes archaic very, very quickly.
Were there any other sort of discussions of internal challenges that stood out?
So we say internal challenge that we've had, so we discussed employee, we discussed culture. I think another big one was going back to even the compensation. I think I had a great conversation, I think it was Adam Schlachter, he was speaking to later. So we were discussing how we all realized that there's definitely a need for having, call it the honest or the brave conversation with the clients around whether it's the relevant business outcome, whether it's relevant measurable KPIs. But having said that, it is not easy to have those conversations because a lot of times certain sort of bonuses or fees or compensation, even the client side, is tied to certain media outputs. So it's how do we collectively try and get away from some of those, you know, conversations where you cannot truly measure the business outcome, and if you start just focusing on the media output, it's a slippery slope that leads towards commoditization, given the focus we've been getting and the pressure we've been getting from procurement more and more, right? Squeezing of fees every day. So I think there's definitely a challenge. It's just about getting folks internally on the right page because a lot of folks have been in this, you know, agency world forever, 20, 30 years, and there's just no one way. So I think it's important to get people to realize we need to change the conversation and change it quickly, as opposed to getting dictated sort of by the clients towards certain media outputs, which then sort of puts agencies in a very dangerous position.
So on the technology provider side, as you can imagine, there was some mild frustration with agencies, I would say.
You being kind, mild, really.
Yeah, no, I'm being
say
really,
like it is.
I'm being really
Any
kind.
agency, any tech guys out there, you can feel free to swear at us, you know. We realize what a
Well,
dysfunctional world we've created.
You
so.
know, I think everyone was pretty nice, but it was about the opaque structures and not really even knowing who to get through to, and nothing would surprise you. What would be your sort of advice to a technology provider to navigate that labyrinth?
I think to start off with, one of the key things I would say is please don't, assuming you manage to get a meeting, which is I know not easy to do, and assuming it's with the right person, which again is really hard. I think it's important to very quickly articulate, not only obviously your value proposition, but more importantly, what problem you're trying to solve for. Because I've seen a lot of everyone coming in, sort of, whether it's around verification or whether it's around sort of ad serving or whether it's around, of course, data, and just saying yes, we can do that. So there's a lot of me too, and whether that's a core competency or not. And I almost don't blame them in a way because it's like table stakes say yes, we can do that, and then they'll go back and figure it out. But it literally have 10 providers all saying we can do that. How in the world is one supposed to distinguish who actually can and who will like jerry-rig it, right? With like bubble gum, I don't know, right? So I think that goes back to some of the approaches that the big agencies and the holding companies have taken, which is there's a specific group that literally focuses on just this because that's their job. It's like, let's focus, identify the best of breed, and let's have deals with them in place at either the agency level or holding company level, right? So for example, whether it's ad serving, whether it's for ad verification, whether it's for DMPs, whatever the case might be, and then let's have it for 12 months. We realize that the pace of technology is very fast and moves quickly, but having said that, you've got to have something in place for us to try it and see if we can scale it, because if you're literally changing, sort of best of breed or preferred partners every 3 or 6 months, you're not getting anything done. It's just, the data isn't there, we can't benchmark anything, we don't know what to hold up against, right? So I think, that's why it's important if you're a solution provider or technology solution provider, is first and foremost is, I would strongly advise 2 things. One is please take the time and understand the portfolio of the agency that you're going into, and especially if a couple of the big clients, be it on the automotive side, be it on the financial services side, and then do your homework and figure out what specifically are you solving for, right? I think that's really important. And then quickly get to that point. If you get in and start, using those slides as crutches, forget about it, because you and your competitors are going to say exactly the same thing, and the eyes of the media team is going to glaze over, and it's over, right? So I think it's very important to do your homework. And then, having said that, very quickly, I would strongly advise usually starting at the top. So start with, the digital investment officer, the digital CEOs, because these are the people who are usually are the ones who have the authority to bring in preferred partnerships and also have, if they can very quickly discern your value proposition, introduce you to the right teams. And then on the other hand is also, if it's a big enough team, is talk to senior account and client directors. Outside of that, don't waste your time with the below of the AMD or Soup, because they just don't have the authority. It could be, you're going to talk to them and hang out with them and get to sense of the business, so you have a problem to solve for. But in terms of pitching the actual solution, I would absolutely start higher.
What do you think about lunch and learns? It actually came up a lot.
Are you serious?
That everyone was using lunch and learns.
Oh, Jesus,
yes.
no. How long have it been going on for? I mean,
it's an enduring power. It's like the click-through, It's like it'll always be with
beer
us.
Fridays, lunch and learns. Like
sometimes you don't have to reinvent things. Innovation's not always the answer.
No. That's really sad. Wow. I think. See, here's the thing. I've seen tons of lunch and learns in my time at do you have
any lunch and learn tips? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Within the Publicis family. No, seriously, guys. I think I've seen nothing, for the most part, nothing good's come of those. I've seen literally 8 people in there, and
pizza.
10 people more show up for the pizza slice, and they'll be on their phones, and I feel really bad for the publisher or the vendors desperately trying to get across 3 slides. It's horrible. I would much rather focus on give me 20 minutes of your time, come in with your value proposition. I've understood your specific portfolio of clients. This is a business challenge. Do you agree? Do you not agree? Because if it's not the business challenge, I'm wasting your and my time, right? Get in, get out. Because the lunch and learns, the ROI on those things, come on. That's just, whether it's like cupcakes or coffees or pizzas or breakfast or beer Fridays, I've lost count. No, don't they also have those jeans and sneaker parties? And I can go on.
Oh, way to play dumb.
Oh, wow.
Come on.
Seriously?
Slippery
slope.
Time for
slippery slope.
Apple picking is the big one, the Apple Store. Anyone have any questions before we go into a break? We have a microphone in the back. We got another one over here. Tanya's on her way.
Hi, Travis from Marchex. can you tell us what's a successful solution provider, and what do you think made them different? So assume that you did a deal with a solution provider, and what made that deal particularly unique that made it successful inside the organization?
I think as I alluded to earlier, right? I mean, you have to do your homework. You really have to, there's no shortcuts. You really have to understand specifically the business problem you're solving for, and ideally, don't try to boil down the ocean. Focus on one or two key clients that the agency has. Spend time with their teams, really understand what specifically you're solving for. Go in, and once you solve for that and you can scale for it, these folks talk amongst themselves, right? Then very quickly, through word of mouth, you will get scaled. That's what I would suggest. I think it's really, really important to focus on a couple of key clients and go from there. Because if you try to boil the ocean, you're just wasting your time. Sorry, what was that? I didn't give you any name. I was just giving you the whole strategy and how to go about doing it. Sorry, can't give names. But again, see, this is where the homework comes in. You should know, right? I mean, there are plenty of announcements that go out there once the deals are done. So whether it's within, Group M or Publicis, I'm sure that's very easy for you to find out. But that's part of the footwork you got to do, right?
Okay, any others? No names. Cool. So one thing before we go, what would you put on the challenge board? So we asked people to put challenges, the big challenge that they face. What would yours be?
I think mine would be very quickly figuring out the true value proposition in terms of the value that we as agencies today are adding to a client. So it cannot simply be about planning and buying and executing against media, because that's a function that's heavily commoditized and anybody can do it. So big focus from a channel perspective is really honing in with close to your clients. The key, I think, I mentioned, it's the same, exact same advice that I gave to the tech providers, right? Is hone in very quickly on the key KPI that leads to a relevant business outcome, and then relentlessly focus on that. Okay. If you get caught up in media outputs, you're done.
So agency value proposition. I'm going to ask you to write this down on one of the magnets and put it up there.
Cool.
And everyone else, we sort of got caught up in the dress thing. So we have fewer magnets up there than there are people here. So if you didn't do a magnet, you can do yellow or blue, because I think we all saw blue because of the lights. And if you could write down your challenge, we're going to have a break now. And if you could write down a challenge, please do put it up there, because we actually use these as we go on, and they actually are really useful, not only for the conversations up here, but these will be out at the cocktails and stuff like this, and you'll see that it does work. I'm grouped in there, and we'll talk about it later. But I need more to work with, so please do add a couple during the break. And we will be back in here in 15 minutes. Thanks. Thank you, Vic.